Running is awesome, period. But running isn't always runner's highs and personal bests. Any sport where athletes might finish with poop running down their legs in front of thousands of people must have some downsides, right? Well, these 7 things that happen to just about every new beginner runner are the unfortunate challenges you're going to have to deal with when you start learning to run. But the worst part about them is that these things can be kind of embarrassing, so not many people talk about them, and therefore not many people know how to avoid them. We'll fix that here with you today, so hopefully you don't end up looking like all of these folks. What's up, motivators? My name is Taryn. When ordinary people want to accomplish something extraordinary in endurance sports, they choose our totally free Motive training plans. You're ready to take on that next big challenge? Let's do it. Let's rip the band-aid off and start with the challenge of them all, needing to poop during a run. What's happening here is that when we run, about 80% of the blood flow that normally goes to our stomach to digest food gets pushed out into the arms and legs to help us run. So our stomach isn't working like it normally does. Pair that with gravity of every foot strike pushing our food further and further through our digestive tracts, and new runners really often have to go number 2. I had this issue when I first started running, and yes, I donated some underwear to the local bushes a couple of times. How you avoid this is not by taking Imodium before a run, and it is not by not eating before a run. You need to build up your stomach muscles the exact same way you need to build up your leg muscles as a runner. And you do this by eating a really small liquid-based meal, like a small shake before your runs. Then gradually building up the amount of that shake that you drink a little bit each run. If your runs are really bad for, well, having the runs like what I had, follow this gradual build-up with the liquid shakes, but just do your runs on a treadmill at a gym and poop when you need to. Your stomach will get stronger as you go. Next super classy thing to talk about, chafing. Nipple chafing, armpit chafing, shirt collar chafing, undercarriage chafing. We're gonna get to know each other really well here today, motivators. Some people have a body shape that causes things to rub when running. Pair that with sensitive skin and you may look like this by the end of your runs. Now do not, I repeat, do not use chafe guards. This just protects our skin, leaving it wimpy and feeble against the effects of what causes the chafing. So the second you don't have those guards on, you're going to chafe again. I actually used chafe guards when I was starting out running, and the chafe guards themselves caused even more chafing, and after, my skin was still sensitive. Instead of guards, use anti-chafe cream like Body Glide. This will reduce chafing while making your skin a little bit tougher every time you go out and run. Eventually, you won't need to use the cream at all because your skin will just toughen up. And don't worry, it's not like your skin is going to turn into crocodile armor, it'll just be a little bit less sensitive. The third extremely attractive thing us runners deal with are our gross toenails. I literally used to think my gnarled up feet were a point of pride, and I didn't want to go for pedicures because I wanted my feet to look like a drunk celebrity mugshot. Eventually, this caught up to me and my banged up feet started having problems with broken toenails, ingrown toenails, and misaligned toes. These are long-term problems that can debilitate us when we're older, so it's best to just avoid them. How we do this is by getting the proper running shoes. Now, running shoes need to give us a lot more room than we think. When we run, our feet swell up a lot, and this is especially true if you run later in the day and not in the morning. So when you're buying running shoes, you should go a half to a full size larger than your normal shoes to give your feet room to move and room to swell. You want your running shoes to be locked in around the heel and the midfoot, but very roomy in the toe box. The next issue isn't so up close and personal. I was once taking a coaching course where the textbook read, in any given season, 60% of your athletes will encounter a major injury. And I was sitting there like, whoa, wait a minute here. So as coaches, we are supposed to just accept that more than half the time we are going to fail our athletes and they are going to be debilitated because of a major injury. Not cool to do that. Isn't running all about being healthy? So I really went down a rabbit hole of how to reduce injuries for the athletes who use training plans in our app, because I didn't want half of the people to be injured at any one time. Running is particularly hard to avoid injuries because we smack the ground with 7 to 8 times the force of our body weight with every single foot strike. And we do the exact same motion over and over and over, so if anything isn't lined up properly, we develop overuse injuries. That's why in our app, we tell our runners, triathletes, duathletes, and swim runners to do as many of their long runs on trails and soft surfaces as much as possible. and this has actually been identified as one of the leading things that runners can do to reduce their likelihood of injury. The next thing dives into some of the female nether regions, and I just learned this in the past year on a podcast we did with a female professional triathlete. Ladies often have troubles with heart rate monitor straps rubbing under their sports bras. Now, many women solve this issue by just using a heart rate monitor that's built into a lot of the running watches out there. But these heart rate monitors are really inaccurate, being off by as much as 40 beats per minute. So instead, we'd recommend getting an armband heart rate monitor, which I've tested and found is just as accurate as the chest-based straps. Speaking of heart rate when you run, it will be your best friend and your worst enemy. You see, the key to running well is to spend about 80% of your time running at a really low heart rate. So low that it barely feels like exercising. Now you might say, but what about all my friends who post those 7-minute miles on Strava and call it a recovery run? Well, those people are lying. I've trained with a lot of professional athletes over the years, and when they run easy, they run really, really easy. I am talking about Olympians who run 9-minute miles and slower most of the time. The thing is, nobody likes to post those slow runs, so people just tend not to do them. Then everyone else thinks that these 7-minute miles are the recovery days. Slow running is so uncommon out there that when I was training and racing heavily, I actually had people accuse me of cheating because of the difference between my typical running pace that I posted online and how fast I actually ran in races. Well, motivators, we need to check our egos at the door 70 to 80% of the time and run extremely slowly. I'll give you a resource to figure out how slowly this needs to be for you at the end of this video. Finally, the last thing that isn't really talked about that you need to know comes to running races, and it is that even when they go well, they feel awful. The final third of any race is going to feel like you're walking a fine line between a personal best accomplishment and walking off the course and crying your way home. This is normal to feel this way in a race. We are pushing ourselves to see what our physical limitations are after all. So at this point in the race, we want to feel on the inside like our eyes are about to start bleeding, but on the outside, we want to look strong and want to avoid bonking like this. How you avoid being that person who looks awful during a race is by having a really good training plan. Hint, hint, you can get a free personalized training plan customized to you with the Motive app. But the big keys to running well in a race are this. First, your long runs need to build up to an over-distance run where you're running longer than the distance of your chosen race. Second, your training balance needs to be right, so 70 to 80% of the time should really be turtle's pace, slow, kind of easy. But the other 20 to 30% of the time, you should be really pushing into the depths of your soul to teach your body how to run well. Finally, you need your running nutrition to be enough to provide good energy for your run, but not so much food that you're back in the porta potties all race. And this is actually so important to avoid bonking that we have a workout nutrition recommendation inserted into every single workout in our training plans so athletes can dial in that nutrition as well as possible. Avoid these 7 things and you will avoid the chafed nipples, dirty running shorts, and broken up toes that a friend I know really well, not me, certainly not me, experienced for years. Finally, I promised a way to learn to start running at a low heart rate. Click the video that's on the screen right now to get our complete system on how to get started running at a low heart rate as easily as possible. Later, motivators.